Delegation this year at Waitangi has been led by Stephen Joyce, who spoke at yesterday's pōwhiri and his media stand-up without incident. The group has been taking part in ceremonies and events over the past day and of course again this morning here at the Treaty Grounds for the Dawn Parade. This year has been less fraught and disrupted by protesters. Nothing was thrown at you, Mr. Joyce, or at anyone, and in stark contrast from recent years. So to discuss this further, Stephen Joyce is in the tenity in the tent with us this morning. Morena, how has the Waitangi been for you this year?
Oh, it's been lovely, the whole thing. I think yesterday, the change in bringing everybody onto the upper marae worked. And it worked actually because Ngāpuhi embraced it, and I think that's important. And in fact led it, and then of course the traditional dawn ceremony this morning, where everybody I think sort of looks at their clock at 4 o'clock and thinks this is a really bad idea, but by the time they get inside the ceremony, and it's a wonderful ceremony. So it's
you're uplifted.
You're uplifted
at 4:30 in the morning.
4:30 in the morning. That's exactly right.
What did you take away from this morning's ceremony?
I just thought that it was again a sort of a follow-on from yesterday, and there's a lot of talk about unity and progress, and I think it's a good thing for a change, because we often, particularly because of the nature of how some of the past events have been, we often focus on division around the treaty, but actually it's also important to focus on progress, and that was sort of my point of my speech yesterday. Is that 178 years on, yep, we've had many big bumps along the way, and some lots of things still to be done, but we've actually also achieved a heck of a lot as a country with that founding document.
You also said you took a walk
Yes.
along the parade, was it?
Yes.
Walked down the bottom and talked about what a significant and beautiful place it was here. Do you think after having such a successful pōwhiri and event, it's time to come back to Waitangi?
Well, I think there's been two, if you like, innovations in the last few years as a result of some events, including one that involved me personally, which you referred to. But
only aroha's been thrown at you this year.
That's right. That's exactly it. Well, some would say. Anyway, but I think there's been two innovations. One has been the taking of treaty celebrations around the country, and I think it's important that politicians do that. And we've taken the call, and it's been well received. Ngāti Whātua last year, and this year at Ngāi Tahu in the very deep south. And it's been interesting. A few people have commented, well, it's a long way away. Well, it's part of the country, it's
That's
part
right.
of the story. And of course, the treaty itself went on tour to collect the signatories way back then. So I think that's one important innovation. But it's also important that we come to a settled view about how it's to be celebrated here at the birthplace of the nation. And I think hopefully reasonably settled view is that yesterday worked, and hopefully we'll see more of that sort of celebration. Like, I think protests are part of the whole thing, but it's all about the respect for the office, not the individual, but the office. That's what we're talking about.
Yesterday the Prime Minister gave a nod to you and made mention of the sort of cross-party representation at the pōwhiri, and noted that she felt it might be a little bit historic that had happened. Do you think there is a place for more cross-party work and things like Waitangi Day?
Well, I think that was the other thing that has been a bit unsung about that day, is that we all went on together, and that it was different. And normally, historically, the government goes on, or the opposition goes on first, or whatever, and that actually meant that we all had to, as we should, we all had to put our politics aside,
play nice,
and sit next to each other. And actually, if it's a celebration of the country, then that actually doesn't need to be a celebration of the individual partisan political views. It's a celebration of the country, and it's a celebration of the treaty and where we've come from. So actually, I don't think that was particularly anticipated to be a thing, but it worked. It was actually a sort of more of how it was all scheduled, and there was lots of toing and froing, and that was sort of how it landed. But actually, I would just looking at it think that's probably a good way of doing it in future.
It was a very respectful order of ceremonies, if you like, with some of the Labour ministers starting, and then New Zealand First, the Greens, and you having a spot in there as well.
Definitely. They put us up the batting lineup, which was nice.
Yeah, that's right. But then the Prime Minister spoke from the Maho, and you've been involved in Waitangi celebrations for a very, very long time, and you'll recall, 20 years ago when Helen Clark was sheltered down.
Yeah,
You know
I wasn't involved in the politics back then.
But you'll recall
Yeah, I
that,
do
that
recall,
time.
of course,
So,
that.
so being part of that ceremony yesterday where the Prime Minister had the opportunity to stand in the formal ceremonies, how did you feel about that?
Well, I'm one of those people that believes that that's the way it should be. And so I felt that not before time, and because it shouldn't, this is my view, and you've got to
Yes.
respect everybody's customs, but it shouldn't depend on your gender as to where you get to speak, and particularly when you're the Prime Minister, it's the office of Prime Minister. So I thought it was great, but I don't want to sort of overplay it. I think that's the way it should be.
Yeah, no, and also the decision was made by Mana Whenua,
Yep,
Peter
that's
Paraone
true,
and his team, so
That was
it
good.
was probably
Yeah.
quite successful because of that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, ultimately, you've got to respect the place that you're at and who sets it. I'm glad they did put it that way.
You're leading quite a large delegation of National Party MPs here this
We've
year.
got quite a few, you see.
Yeah.
56 at last count.
You've got a bunch of the new ones with you. What do you think of the things you take away and will reflect on and perhaps
Well, the
then
thing
put into your work
about
streams?
politicians when we're doing our jobs well is that we go to as many places as possible and listen to as many people as possible, and that's in all settings. And of course, Waitangi Day is an important, hugely important part of this country. So it's an opportunity for everybody to have their ears open and listen to what people have got to say. And I think what was good about yesterday and today is that this time it's a celebration, we need to celebrate because there's very few countries in the world. I mean, as I say, there's lots of things we can point out that are negative and haven't come to pass with the treaty and still to be done and all those things, which is right. But actually, we're still one of the few countries in the world that has a framework like the Treaty of Waitangi, which is delivering now a lot for the country as a whole and for the individual treaty partners. So still more to do, but.
You've been involved with iwi leaders in your
Yep.
time when you were in government. This year there's a new portfolio, the Māori Crown Relations. What do you make of that portfolio and what do you think could be achieved from it?
Well, we're supportive of it, and it's something that Chris Finlayson, as Treaty Negotiations Minister, was spending quite a bit of time on, which is what happens after the treaty settlements are done. And there are a lot of commitments in those agreements about how to work together post-settlement. So, the headline is always, there's a settlement of a certain number and a certain set of things, but actually it's the post-settlement relationship, which is the bit that really needs a lot of focus now. So I think we'll find that that Chris was actually set this in play, and then of course the officials would have recommended it to the incoming government. I think they probably would have recommended it to us as well, because we're getting to that stage of the process. As long as we can get that Ngāpuhi settlement done.
They say, ko te kai a te rangatira, ko te kōrero, the food of the chief is talk.